Hello, in this video I'm going to share a technique that can be used with children. I've used this with children as young as 8, teenagers, adults, to ensure that you can overcome mistakes, overcome failing, overcome losing by coming from the true self rather than the ego self. Now, it's worth bearing in mind that remember, whenever we are in a negative situation, generally, especially at the beginning, we're going to have a negative reaction, releasing negative emotions. So it's really important to bear that in mind. So this technique may not be able to be used in the moment because you may be in that fight, flight or freeze response. Generally, if we lose or make a mistake or fail, it triggers the fight response. So while the amygdala is in action, that is a prime opportunity for the ego to step in, to become defensive, to go in denial, to blame others. So when you're in that amygdala reaction, you just need to get those emotions out in a positive way. And then when you're feeling calm and rational, you do this technique that I'm about to show you. And then over time, as you rewire your brain and change your mindset and your thought processes, this will become the initial response. So you have to keep repeating it before you finally get there, as with all of these techniques. But over time, you will find that your ego goes down and your true self comes up. So as with all of my techniques, they're very simple. You don't need any resources, just pen and paper, very simple. So as you can see here, when we make a mistake, you have two choices. You can either own the mistake or you can deny it. So obviously when you're denying it, as we've talked about before, that's coming from the ego. It's the ego that sends us into denial, because remember, it wants you to think everything's perfect, everything's okay, you've done nothing wrong, we're all good. Whereas the true self is aware that you need to make mistakes in order to grow. So it isn't bothered about mistakes. It wants you to make mistakes as part of your journey. So when we are owning it, straight away, we know we're coming from our true self. And when we deny it, straight away, we know we're coming from the ego self. Now, when we own it, obviously then we're going to have to suffer the external consequences. So imagine a child has been unkind to another child at school. So now they're going to suffer the external consequences. That might mean that they get a detention at school. It might mean that their parents take their iPad off them for a week. They're the external consequences. But once those external consequences are done, you can forget about the situation, you can let it go, it's done, it's over, and they've had an opportunity to learn and grow. And the more we go through this process, the more we can protect our inner peace, we can build our strong character, and therefore be kinder to ourselves, because we know deep down that these are the things that are important, far more important than losing some time in the detention or losing iPod time, for example. Now, when we deny it, and this is the ego reaction, and the ego can be so strong, like I say, particularly in those emotional moments, the problem is then, instead of suffering the external consequences, yeah, great, we might have got away with it, we might not have had to have that detention or have lack of screen time, but now we have to suffer the internal consequences, and they will feel like guilt, shame, and create negative energy, which will come out in ways that you don't like and you don't want. But again, the ego will convince you everything's okay. And another problem with this is, if we get into a habit of being dishonest and denying things, we project that onto the world around us. So then now we think everybody else is dishonest and we can't trust them. And that's really damaging for all of our relationships. And this will result in low self-worth, distrust in others, and can create feelings such as anxiety, depression over time. So it is really detrimental that we own what we've done, we deal with the consequences and forget about it and move on. Whereas if we deny it, we're carrying around all that negative energy, and it is so destructive for all our four bodies, our mental, our emotional, our physical body. It's really, really destructive. And basically, you've got to see it as you're trading your short-term pleasure for your long-term happiness. if you want to help your child or your teenager with this, then what I would recommend is that you make sure that they feel safe and confident to share anything that they've done with you, that they know that they can come to you with all their mistakes, all their failings, and they know that they're going to get a supportive response from you rather than a negative reaction, because now they're in a place where they're being honest not only to themselves but also to you, and now you can move on to how do we fix the problem. So that would be my advice. Really ensure that, yes, okay, there needs to be consequences, but you need to strike a balance that they feel that you're going to support them and help them rather than make them feel even worse and punish them about whatever it is that they're trying to get through. Thank you.